I'm glad actually you asked that. What does it mean? What does it mean to have somebody who is only 24 years old elected into office? What does it mean for a city to have its first black mayor, particularly at this time in our history? You know, I wasn't quite sure. When I was first elected, it was 2 years ago now, and I was struggling to myself wrap my hands around. I'd been on the city council for 4 years. I knew the wonky details of it. I knew the sidewalk policy. I knew the budgets. What I didn't quite know is what it meant as a symbol. I didn't quite yet know what I represented. And it wasn't until 6 months on the job, a woman came to me and she said that her son was adopted. She was a white woman. Her and her partner adopted a young black boy who is now getting older. He's now 15 years old. This 15-year-old gets into the elevator at City Hall. He's coming to visit his mom. And somebody in the elevator looks at him and says, "Hey, are you the mayor?" Sorry. I said, "Sue, that's not funny." And she said, "No, you don't understand. He, at 15, I'm sure you followed the Trayvon Martin case. Yeah. At 15, as a black man in America, he had been confused for a lot of things. He'd had people cross the street when he approached. He'd had people follow him around stores. But he'd never yet had somebody assume that he was a figure of authority, that he was somebody to be respected. And when he came home that night, he felt differently about himself. And he felt differently about what was possible for his life. And that was a trip. That was a trip. It changed my perspective. And it's actually why I wanted to come here today. And what I'd like to speak with you about today is convincing you to run for office. All of you. None of you live in Ithaca, right? That one's taken. That's taken. Anything but that. I want you to run for office because I firmly, firmly believe that we need a new generation of leadership in elected office. And it's not a secret, it's not just government, but elected office. It's not a secret that young people are extremely involved in. How many of you work here in DC? Oh, yeah. Have you ever been on the Hill? You go to the Hill often? If you were to walk around the Hill and you didn't know anything else, you would think our entire government was run by 20-somethings, right? And that once in a while, they would grab some senior citizens and ask them to stand in front of podiums and read the stuff that they wrote for them, right? That would be, if you were an alien, it's true. And that's fine, and that's great, but I actually think having young people applying what you have to offer to elected office can be powerful. And to understand why that is, I'd like to talk to you a bit. I want to tell you a few stories. And I want to start with my favorite subject, and that is me, right? It's my favorite subject. And if you ever hear a politician say his favorite subject is not himself, he's lying, okay? She's lying. Don't believe anything they say after that. And what we often like to do, you know, James Carville, he's a talking head now. He used to work in politics. He said, every politician would have you believe that they were born in a log cabin that they built with their own two hands, right? That's how we all like to start our stories. Because we all like to believe, and this is not just politicians now, but this is Americans. It's built into our DNA that we believe that we can all pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. Any one of us that's successful is successful because of their own hard work, right? Their own ambition, their own talent, and their own skills. And I would like to believe that myself. And in fact, it's a very tempting story for me to tell. When I was elected at 24, it was 20 years almost to the day when we fell into homelessness for the final time. When my mother, with our 4 children, my 2 older brothers, my younger sister, took us out of the homeless shelter into a car that she had rented with money sent from my grandparents and drove us all the way up to the East Coast to get out of Florida and back to her hometown. This was after years of going in and out of homeless shelters because of my father's addiction to drugs, crack cocaine. 20 years after that, I graduated from Cornell University and was the youngest mayor in the history of New York State. And a lot of people asked how. You know, they wanted to believe, and people still to this day will come up to me and say, you are such an inspiration. You are so incredible. And I say, go on. And they say, you are so tall. And I say, yes, please keep going. And they say, you know. And it is very, very tempting, you know, to tell your story in the way that we are so accustomed to hearing our stories told of a young boy that starts kindergarten, doesn't always have the nicest clothes, but works hard in school, does his homework, perseveres, and because of it is able to work his way into an Ivy League school. From there, he works 3 part-time jobs to pay his way through Cornell University, and while he's there at the ripe young age of 20 years old, he's plucked by a community and said, we need you to run for city council. We need you to represent us. And 4 years later, that same community comes back and says, we need you to be the mayor. It sounds terrific. It's what I wish I could tell you about myself, because it makes me feel better, right? It makes me feel cooler. But it's not the truth. The truth is that I was lucky enough to be raised by a remarkable, remarkable woman. Somebody who worked 2 to 3 jobs, always at around minimum wage. Never in her life made more than $20,000 a year, but found a way to raise 4 children on that pay. Kept us in school when we didn't want to go. Relied on her parents, my grandparents, who were retired school teachers with a pension, right? Not a pension large enough to buy a yacht or to bankrupt a state, right? Pensions aren't bankrupting our states, right? But it's a pension large enough so that when I needed shoes to go to school, because mine had been worn through, they were able to get shoes for me. When we needed a roof, they put us in their basement until we could get a 2-bedroom apartment, and then finally a house. Right? It's a story of teachers who, in spite of everything I did to sabotage myself, and I did quite a bit, they would track me down. They would find out why I wasn't in school. They would force me to do my homework, and they wouldn't allow me to fail. Government workers, right? Lunch ladies who would wave me through the line because they knew that I was too embarrassed to type in the code for the free lunch. Right? Bus drivers who would put me in the front of the bus so that I could do my reading, because they knew that some of the white kids would taunt me if I sat in the back with the big kids. And even once I got into Cornell, I was propelled by an incredible web of people, both in public institutions and government and in private institutions, that pushed me forward. I did work 3 part-time jobs at Cornell, and I made about $15,000 each year. Now, do any of you know how short you're going to be if you make $15,000 a year at Cornell University? Does anybody know off the top of your head? You're going to be well short. You're not going to make it. Yeah, you're not going to make it. So I got through with federal grants, state grants, Pell grants, and the generosity of alumni, wealthy folks who had benefited from their education and gave back not because they knew me or ever would know me, not because my success would ever in any way directly benefit them, but because they believed that people deserved a chance. You know, and even when I got the harebrained scheme myself to run for city council, it wasn't a community that plucked me, but it wasn't a community that shunned me either. It was a community of people who looked at me and said, okay, you mostly don't know what you're talking about, but you're energetic and we like it. So we're going to help you get into this job and get some things done. And again, when I ran for mayor, they looked at me and they didn't see the perfect candidate, right? But they saw somebody who, again, was willing to put whatever skills I did have into my job, and they supported me because of that. So I ended up getting elected. We had, and this is, I blame my campaign manager. My campaign manager had a terrific tactic for me. He said, here's what we're going to do. You're going to announce you're running for mayor before anybody else. You're going to raise as much money as anybody else has ever raised before you even announce. I'm going to endorse you. He's a county legislator. I'm going to endorse you, and this campaign is going to be over before it started, 7 months before the race. Right? So we do it. I raise the money. He endorses me. I announce. A week later, 7 other people in the race. 7, not a joke, 7 other people in the race. We were able to tough it out. I didn't fire him. We were able to tough it out, and I ended up winning the election with 55% of the vote. We won all 18 election districts. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, ma'am. And if ever you feel the need to interrupt me with wild applause, and yes, laughter is good too. I'll pause for that. That's the real story. It's a much more complicated story to tell. It's a longer story to tell. And it's a story that on the other end of it, I don't look all that good. Right? I look like somebody who was very, very lucky to be raised by the people that he was and to be surrounded by a system as compassionate as it was. But why is it important to tell the story in that way? Right? What does it matter how we tell our stories? I'll tell you, it matters how we tell our stories because if we tell our stories the correct way, we get the correct moral from those stories. And when we tell them the wrong way, the way we've been telling them for too long in this country, the story of self-made men and great men and women of history, we're going to get the wrong morals, and from the wrong morals, we'll take the wrong actions. Now, what's the wrong morals? I was always struck. Black History Month, we'd always have Black History Month. Shortest month, I don't want to talk about it, it's okay. We'll just look, but we get it. So we get Black History Month. So we learn about it in school, which is great. And who do we learn about in Black History Month? Martin Luther King Jr. Now, how is it that a whole room full of people say the exact same name? Right? Because that's how we learn it. We say, once upon a time, black people didn't have civil rights. Martin Luther King Jr. Now we do. So now what did he do? What did he do? He gave a speech. Gave a speech, we got civil rights. It's a hell of a speech. It's a good speech. They don't make them like that anymore. You know? And before that even, you learn about Abraham Lincoln, right? That's the greatest president. Does anybody know when Martin Van Buren was sworn in? Yeah, me neither. No, somebody did actually know. I was joking. Okay, all right. We learn about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. Those are our presidents. Those are our great men of history. And what did Abraham Lincoln do? Freed the slaves, right? There was slavery. Abraham Lincoln. No, and what did he do? He gave a speech. And again, speeches. This is, I'm not sure this speech right here is going to make it, but into that pantheon. But that's what we believe, right? He gives a speech, we get freedom. And again, George Washington, the same story. The father of our nation. He beat the British, founded our country. All in a day's work for Mr. Washington, right? You ever see, what's the famous picture of him crossing the Delaware River? Have you seen this on Christmas to sneak attack the British? Right? Look again at that picture, Google it if you can. He's the only guy in the boat not doing any work. The whole boat's rowing. He's standing there like this. It's just, it's not that hard, George. But that's what we learn. So that's what we understand, right? If you dig a little deeper, you find that Dr. King was not alone. He wasn't alone when he gave that speech. And he came towards the end of a fight that had been happening for centuries. A fight for rights and for freedom that predated him and Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, that thousands and thousands of people had given parts of their life or all of their lives for. Everybody had done their part. All of these people had sacrificed, had taken chances, had taken risks. And we don't hear about their stories. Now, what does that matter? Does it matter because they all need monuments and memorials? Well, maybe. But it matters that we remember that fact, that those great men did not accomplish what they accomplished alone. And in fact, that they weren't all as great as we remember them to be. We have to remember that so that we can remember the moral, which is that if great changes are going to happen in this country, all of us are going to have to take chances. All of us are going to have to take risks. All of us are going to have to use whatever talents, whatever skills we have right now, not waiting for the next Martin Luther King Jr., not waiting for the next Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Barack Obama or Mitt Romney to come and change the country. Because if we believe that's going to happen, then what we'll do is we'll work like heck to elect Barack Obama, And then in January 2008, we'll go home and wait for him to fix it, right? And it's not the way it works. So I need you, we need you to run. I need you to stand in front of or behind these or to the side of, I don't know, I keep going to the side of these things instead of with the clipboards in the background. And you may believe, well, you pay your dues. You sacrifice your innocence sometimes, your naivete, your ignorance, your energy. You trade all that in for what? For experience. And then once you're experienced, you serve. But I'm going to tell you that you have something that trumps experience. You have energy, you have creativity, and you have a moral authority that we badly, badly need in our politics right now. And we need it from our leaders. I know that you can apply those three things into any walk of life, but when your leaders are demonstrating that energy, when they're demonstrating that creativity, and when they show a moral authority, it has a ripple effect and a lasting effect that can be positive. So I'll tell you a few stories about Ithaca and how this has happened since I took office. Energy is actually how I want, and young people, I feel it waning every day. I shouldn't even just say it's young people. I should say for everything that comes from here on out, I have seen in 8-year-olds and I've seen it in 88-year-olds. Right? I've seen it in people who are young at heart, and I've seen people who are my age, cynical beyond belief. As Khalil Gibran once said, I've seen an old face much lined with nothing, and a smooth face in which all things were graven. Right? This is about a mindset and not a birthday. Right? But those with a young mindset, those who have energy, the energy that it takes to stay up all night and go to work the next day, right? Have the energy it takes to move mountains if applied in the right direction. And that's how I got elected. Running against those 7 people, I didn't have as many endorsements. I didn't raise as much money. So what I did is I knocked on doors. I decided I was going to knock on the door of every registered voter in the city of Ithaca. And I did it. Well, yes, thank you, yes. Well, you're going to like this part. I had 4 months to election time, so I did it again. I had a month and a half, so I tried to do it. I didn't make it all the way. I did 2.5 times. I knocked on every door of every voter in the city of Ithaca. Right? Now, people looked at me when I knocked the second time. When I knocked the first time, they thought it was cool. When I knocked the second time, they thought I was crazy. By the time I knocked the third time, they said, I'm going to vote for you. Right? Not because you claim to be energetic, not even because I agree with all of your policies, but because you've shown me your energy. And they believed, like I believed, that that energy would be contagious. And sure enough, it has been. Since I took office, we've tackled problems larger than I ever thought we could. I took office facing a $3 million deficit. It's in a budget of about $60 million. So we had to find a way to fix it. And I went to work, and the staff went to work. And I said to myself, 2 goals. I set 2 goals. We're going to close this deficit. We're not going to take money out of our savings. We're not going to increase taxes above the tax cap. And we're not going to lay anybody off. Right? Nobody thought it was possible. Right? 9 months later, we closed the deficit. We didn't lay anybody off. And in fact, we ended up with the lowest tax increase in the city of Ithaca since the year 2000. Right? Now, how do we do it? Long nights. Long nights, long days, weekends. It spent months refinancing our debt, building a first-of-its-kind retirement incentive so that we could ease people into retirement instead of laying people off. Finding ways to restructure systems that hadn't been changed in decades. Right? All of that took not just my work, because I never would have done it myself. It took staff taking time and spending energy that they never had before. And they wanted to do it because they know that I wanted to do it. Having that kind of energy from the top infused the whole organization. The same thing goes for creativity. Young people have a creativity that, again, is unrivaled, right? You ever see a small child, like 4 years old, 4 or 5 years old? You ever watch them play make-believe? Right? You ever watch them say, I'm a cat, or now I'm a tiger, now I'm a roller coaster? right? What they're performing in their minds is an amazing act, because in that moment, they are a cat. They're no longer a 5-year-old girl, right? They're a cat as real as any other cat. What have they done there? Have they just imagined something? Or have they taken the world as we know it, the status quo? Have they taken what is and said it's no less important than what could be, than what we decide to make it? That's what creativity can do. And that's what you can apply to the world around you. So I did something that it's very funny. So we closed the budget deficit, which I'm sure everybody, this is a very wonky room. So I saw a lot of people say, yeah, it's budget deficit, yeah, yeah, it's a good job. Doesn't actually catch the average taxpayer's attention that much. I sold my car 3-4 years ago, and I walk to work. Sometimes I ride my bike, sometimes I take the bus. But I get a parking space in front of City Hall. It's like the best space in the city. It's very nice. So nobody knew what to do. You know, employees were parking in it. It was this whole thing. So what I did is I took 2 benches from one of our parks. I took a tree that we had to cut down that was hanging over a road. We cored it, cut it, planted flowers in it, and we created the smallest park in the city of Ithaca in my parking space. Right? Right? We had a sign that says reserved for mayor, and this is the only money we spent $30 to add a sign that says and to friends. Right? So it's reserved for mayor and friends. Every time I go out for lunch, there's somebody sitting in the park having lunch. It took off. It is the thing, if you guys come to Ithaca with me, and your invitation's always open, if you come to Ithaca with me, and you ask somebody, what do you think about the mayor? They'll go, the parking space guy, right? That's how not the budget deficit, the parking space guy, right? That's how it's known, but it took, that kind of creativity took off and spread, again, like wildfire. We had somebody come to us and say, you know the utility boxes? Does anybody know these? You recognize the utility boxes that are on just about every street corner now? They're usually attached to a light pole. They're about this big and this wide. They're aluminum. It's a form of urban light that's so prevalent it's practically unnoticeable. You've probably walked past 10 of them on your way here. But notice at the next intersection. They said, give us 21 of these. Let us take 21 of these. We're going to do an art contest. We'll get artists to submit their time and pay for their own materials, and we'll give you 21 pieces of art. It's going to work. It's going to be just like your parking space. So we said, okay. It turned out to be the most amazing thing anybody's in the city has ever seen. It's turned the entire city into an outdoor art museum. Similarly, we are rebuilding our entire downtown right now. At a time of tough finances, we were able to raise $4.5 million from the federal government and $2 million from the state government to completely tear up and rebuild our downtown business district. And it's actually funny. Does anybody here work for a senator? Senator staff? Okay, so I'll tell you the story then. I was applying for funds from the FTA. And we were going in for $4.5 million. And Senator Schumer's office and Senator Gillibrand's office are 2 senators from New York State. They've been helping us quite a bit. Of course, one afternoon, I get a call, and it's from Senator Schumer's office, and they say, we want to let you know that thanks to the hard work of Senator Schumer, you're going to be getting $4.5 million. I said, that's terrific. Thank you, Senator Schumer. As soon as I hang up, it rings. I pick it up. It's Senator Gillibrand's office, and they say, we want to let you know that thanks to the hard work of Senator Gillibrand, you're going to be getting $4.5 million. So I say, we're getting $9 million? And they say, no, this is Senate math. It counts twice. So I said, okay. So anyway, so we're rebuilding the downtown, and a civil engineer comes to me. This is a guy who's towards the end of his career. He's in his early 60s, and he says, I need $5,000 more on this project, on this $10 million project. He said, let me tell you why. This is an engineer, mind you. He said, I think I can do better than the orange construction fencing that would go around this. If you give me $5,000 more, I'm going to buy 350 boards and have them whitewashed. And I'm going to give you 350 canvases. And I want you to do the same thing that you did with the 21 boxes and do the same thing you did with your parking space. Create 350 community-owned works of art. And sure enough, in 2 weeks, we covered every single one of them. We now have a backlog of 50. We're painting the insides of them. I don't know who's going to look at them except the construction workers, but we're painting the insides of them because we have more people who want to come down, everything from kindergarten classes to the Senior Citizens Center. Individual families and businesses have all volunteered to paint beautiful works on these boards. And what it's done is it's create 350 stakeholders, people who not only have a reason to come down and visit the Central Business District while it's under construction, but to bring their friends, to brag about the project, and to defend the project if folks around town are skeptical or cynical about it. That kind of creativity caught even into our budget times. We were able to restructure our police department, changing the hours of our shifts, something that hadn't been done in 70 years, changed the hours of our shifts, reassigned folks from records, from a warrant detail, and from a vehicle maintenance pool onto the street. We backfilled it with admin folks, and we were able to save $1 million every year in perpetuity while keeping the same number of police officers on the street. Right? Similarly, I had my superintendent of public works, again, a guy in his 60s, again, a guy who's prone to say things like, well, we can't do that before. And I say, why? He said, because we've never tried it before. I just want to throw my shoe at him, you know. Or he'd say, we can't do it like that. And I say, why? I said, because nobody else does it like that. And so I throw my other shoe at him. He's the reason I had to send a memo to all my senior staff in the first month saying, thou shalt not say to the mayor, we've never done it before, and nobody does it this way. It's the two things nobody's allowed to say to me. And nobody said it in about 12 months now. So I think we're on a good streak. But he comes to me and he says, listen, our recycling program's taken off. We collected 900 tons fewer trash this year than we did 5 years ago. But our routes, our garbage truck routes, are doing the exact same routes that they did in 1952. They're stopping at the same houses at the same time. And by the time they show up to the dump, they're half empty because half the stuff is in recycling. He said, I think I can redraw the districts to pick up all the trash in 4 days. And I give you on that 5th day a street crew to mow lawns and fill potholes. I picked up my shoes and I kissed him on the mouth, right? This is the best thing ever. And he did that, again, saving money. You know, that kind of creativity that flowed again from the top. And the most important, the third one, it's energy and it's creativity, but the third and the most important thing is a moral authority. A barometer. A sense of right and wrong, of justice and injustice that hasn't been eroded away by a lifetime of disappointments, calamities, and bad news. It's a belief that we can and we should, more than should, that we have to do better. Imagine that same 5-year-old that was pretending to be a cat, right? She's eating her ice cream cone. You take her ice cream cone away, right? You ever take an ice cream cone away from a kid? Really, sir? Why would you? No, but if you had, you monster, if you had, what would they say? What would they say?
It was inarticulate screaming.
Yes, mostly screaming and they holding their breath. I use that one as a management technique too. A lot of inarticulate screaming. No, what does a kid say when you take something that's theirs? It's not fair. Who said it's not fair? You ever say this? It's not fair. And then you're all grown up, so what do you say? Oh, you're such bummers. Life's not fair. Life's not fair. You're already so world weary. Maybe I don't want you to run for office. No, seriously, life isn't fair. Do you remember that feeling in the pit of your stomach that you got when you were 7 years old and somebody told you that life wasn't fair? Right? Do you remember that rage, that anger that burned white hot because you knew, and you would say, if you could, 5 years old with ice cream on your face, you would say, a world full of injustices does not excuse any particular injustice. Right? Now, you don't have the verbal skills, so you're going to scream uncontrollably. But now you do. But you're young enough, and you're young at heart enough to remember that feeling, that fire in the pit of your stomach. That sense that because the world hasn't been fair, doesn't mean that it can't be fair. That sense that a rainforest, a world away, is being torn down, and people that are being displaced matter to you, even if you'll never meet them. The sense that the kid who's trying to work his way through school needs support and needs help, not just from private individuals, but from a government. You understand that. You know that a polluted watershed matters even if it's not your watershed. The violence matters even if it's not happening to you. You still believe in your heart that there is right and there is wrong, and that it matters, and that no particular injustice should be washed away just because that's the way it's always been, and that's the way it's always been. You believe that, and that's why we need you. We need you to take your energy and your creativity and to turn it, channel it through that moral authority and to making this world a better place. And you may not have the experience, but I'll tell you, you'll get it. Right? What you lack in experience, that's what I try to do. What you lack in experience, make up for in ignorance. Right? Sometimes you stumble your way to a solution because you didn't know you couldn't solve it. I've done that. Right? I've removed people from boards, appointed other people. Folks walk up to me and say, nobody's done that in 30 years. We were all too afraid to. I said, well, geez, I'm glad you didn't tell me before I did it. Right? But we need you now. And we need it because if those ideals don't flow from the top, from the people behind these podiums, then we're never going to fix the problems that we need to, the problems of environmental degradation, the problems of violence, the problems of apathy and cynicism that underlie all of it. We need your energy, we need your creativity, and we need your moral authority. So I hope you'll join me in running for office. Thank you.